Hello and welcome to everyone listening. We thought to share to everyone that we have this new way of communicating, and today I'm here with Michael Robin Witt. Everything well today, Robin?
I'm all right. Thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right. I think Robin, you have kind of hinted that we were thinking before that we were going to start this new type of communication, right? A bit more
Absolutely,
spontaneous.
absolutely, Marcus. In the last presentation, I hinted that it's your idea to start a podcast dialogue kind of a presentation to keep people informed about Gabather, and I think it's a great idea. We're developing this, and we'll learn as we go. The idea of this podcast, Marcus, if I may just preempt this one, is
Go ahead.
to keep the people, everybody that is interested in Gabather development uptracked. I cannot give updates on financial news, but certainly on scientific news, on developments that we have in the clinic, ideas that we have a little bit on Gabather's history and background. And I think there are quite a lot of number of people that have been very loyal and have been from Gabather for a very, very long time, like Marcus, who started this podcast. I think that would be my baseline to you, Marcus.
Maybe I could steal the idea, say that I was the one pitching it in a phone call with you. And we have had these lovely phone calls for a very long time over the years. I think that was it 2017 that you had this study in for the
That must have been the
pharmacokinetic.
first, yeah, there must have been the first trial in a single ascending dose of GT002. And
Yeah,
we've had many conversations on the phone, but I think this format will allow us to basically give the same information to everybody that wants to listen to it at the same time. I think it's absolutely brilliant. And for me personally also is that it saves me a lot of time if I don't have to make long presentations or long, streaming presentations. We will tape this and Marcus will collect questions from anybody or points of interest, things that might be, worth discussing, brainstorming a little bit. Why not? Give an update on Gabather, and then anybody can look at it in their own time. The schedule, Marcus, we talked about every 3 weeks, 2 weeks, whatever,
something like that, right?
3 weeks.
Yeah, and I think why are we doing this? Because we are a big group of people that's quite interested in the company generally, and although we're very much looking forward for the press releases, we felt that maybe it could be good to have another type of forum where we could be a bit more nuanced. We could ask questions, but the idea would also be in the future that we could dive into some topics, topics of interest for the shareholders, topics of interest for Robin. We were also talking about maybe having some guests in the future. Do you have any ideas on who could be a guest for the podcast,
Yeah, I
Robin?
mean, my first idea would be, of course, to get Mahmoud Hassan in, who is the chief CSO and CEO of Mindic, which we do our EEG studies with. This guy is an absolute top gun in EEG. We've been at his summer school in Iceland to learn from him, and he has exactly the same mentality. We got a very good collaboration with them. I think he can be an extremely interesting guy to listen to. And actually, he's also doing the analysis of the fMRI data right now that we have come back to that later. That would be number one. Then it would be maybe other people at Gabather. Then it would be maybe other collaborations from the clinic. Could be that people that, for example, running a totems project want to tell about how do they see it from a really lab point of view, or people that actually speak to this patient. So it's an opportunity for anybody to literally join Gabather as we go along and move along in this project on this journey. I think if you're interested, then this format could be, and I hope we've experimented with different formats, streaming, PowerPoint presentations on our website, and so on. This is for me, and this is an initial thing I'm developing this with Marcus. It seems to be the most straightforward and easiest one. So I'm looking forward.
Yeah, yeah. I think we mentioned how often also we're aiming for maybe every 2 to 3 weeks, and we'll look around for the circumstances, how it looks in the schedule and so on. But then we were also talking about some, if you want to stay tuned for what could come in the future, I guess
Yeah.
maybe we could have topics about EEG, fMRI. We could then maybe cover also the press releases itself, because they're very formal and they need to be very strict in the way of communication.
That's
But
right.
just to get some nuance, we cannot in this forum say more than you can communicate from the press releases, but we could talk about the subject.
Absolutely.
Licenses deals is something we have talked about, right? Saniona made a deal quite recently.
For example, I mean, I can, update on what is actually going on rather than putting it in a link that nobody actually can find. We can actually mention this and this has happened, or people would sometimes put things to my attention, which I then can relate to you or to everybody that's listening about things that are happening are actually quite interesting, which you literally don't notice. And Gabather is not so big that we can have our own public relations division that can take care of this kind of thing. So this kind of format, I have a lot of hopes actually, Marcus, on it. And I think it's a brilliant idea you came up with. So I look forward.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. We've enjoyed the folk call, so let's see if we can do something great from
Yeah.
this format together so we could make it visible for everyone, right?
Yep. That's
Yes. The last part that would be happening in this format would be that we would maybe discuss also what we're gonna talk about next episode. And maybe next time, I think that a good plan could be we could look at the EEG results, because you had some PowerPoint slides from the past. Maybe I can just share my screen for a second so the viewers would know what I'm meaning. So I think me and many other people are quite interested in these things because we're coming from the outside view, and you guys have the more in-depth knowledge because you're developing a candidate in this, right? So,
right.
for example, when we see these pictures, maybe next time we could discuss a bit what are we measuring and so on.
Definitely, Marcus. I have to preface, a little bit on my background. I'm a preclinical neuroscientist by training many years ago now. So I'm neither an expert in EEG, but I'm neither an expert in imaging. But I know what I want to get out of the clinical data that we have. And it took me a while to find somebody like the people at Mindig who have exactly the same philosophy, which is if we want to look at the brain pathology, diseases of the brain, and how to treat them, we have to look at brain activity. This is what we actually want to modulate, want to influence. And that's two ways of looking at it. There are many ways, but the key ones for me are EEG, electroencephalography, which is a very quick millisecond method where you measure the electrical currents. You only have the electrodes on the top of the brain. You can't penetrate with, okay, now more and more, but not too bad, but it's very fast. And you can get a roughly idea what happens very quickly. This most elegant method is, of course, imaging with fMRI, where you're actually looking at the blood flow as a measure of the activity in a certain area of the brain. Now we're talking, since it's a scan, we're talking about seconds between the activities that you're actually measuring. So the time difference is big. It's much bigger, much slower for fMRI, but you get very good which area of the brain are activated or inactivated in a brain situation. And these two methods have, of course, to be correlated. If you have a very strong EEG activity, something is happening in that area of the brain. Classical example is an epileptic attack. You have a focus of activity in a part of the brain which then discharges in certain cases all over the brain. And this has, of course, to be followed what you see in blood flow in the brain. But there are two different things of measuring. The idea is the same. What you want to do is you look at the functional activity or functional connectivity, even if you look at different areas of the brain with these two methods. And that's what we wanted to do with this famous target engagement study, which you saw the first picture of. The tube is, of course, an fMRI tube where you literally lie down, you push the people in, and you do your measurement. There you are on the right-hand side. This is actually the tube that is in the clinic in Portugal where we did our trials, and this was quite advanced actually, because we did the EEG where you have a mask that you see on the left-hand side. These are the electrodes you put on the top of the head, put on like a helmet or a little cap. And you can do it at the same time. And of course, that means a lot of noise, a lot of electrical.
So you would have the cap and be in the machine at the same time? That's
at
what
the
you're
same
saying?
time. So that was the idea,
Okay.
And again, the summary of the whole idea is these are non-invasive. We're not sticking any needles or giving these people anything that they have to swallow. You literally put people into this, and then you measure the brain activity. Then you compare between having had a reference compound or a sugar tablet or a GT002 in our case. And you literally then compare. And the idea of these clinical trials, which has been the same for us from the very beginning, is you compare the activity in the same volunteer, in this case in the clinical trial for the target engagement study, in the same patient. So the same person comes back 2 weeks later, gets another treatment, and then comes back 2 weeks later again and gets the next treatment. And then you compare within the same person. So you don't take one group of persons here and give them this, and another group of persons there and give them that. And then you compare these two, because for that you need enormous amounts of statistics. What you do is you compare it in exactly the same person. So if you, Marcus, and I were doing the same study, we would both be taking 3 doses of whatever, 3 treatments of whatever, and then we compare the results between you at number 1, 2, and 3, and then next would be me 1, 2, and 3. So that was our philosophy in all our studies. I think it's actually a very good one. It convinces me.
Yeah, I've been very much within statistics myself. So when I hear this type of studies, I become very glad myself, because you're reducing bias, you're reducing randomness, because all the humans are so different. So it could just be that if you're unlucky, right, you just want to reduce bias.
I've been always very sloppy in my statistics study, Marcus. So I'm even more happy for this kind of design, because I can understand it. And of course, for Gabather, you need relatively fewer people run through a trial than if you compare 2 huge groups with each other, right? So that's of course a huge advantage logistically, and also financially. The study doesn't become too unmanageably big or unmanageably expensive.
Yeah. I think another section that we were thinking of having in the podcast was to have some Q&As then. I guess in the future we'll find a way of submitting questions, or we might share some links where you could access a community and so on. But,
Definitely.
Based on what I've heard so far, I think there's some interest. You released this press release the other day, stating the results of the rights issue. Is there anything you'd like to comment today?
Well, I was actually very positively surprised. So not surprised, but fingers crossed. The truth is that when you go with a rights issue, you don't really have 100% guarantee of the result. So these are very, very challenging times, not only for us, for everybody. If you just listen to the news, this is not exactly nice times. But the ironic thing is that when I was waiting for the results from the issue, I was literally on my computer looking at, okay, how much percentage can I expect? And I had actually guessed quite correctly, the right one, around 30%. And the money, never mind those numbers, but the amount of resources that we have now is good enough to do what we want to do and intend to do with those resources, which is working for a partnership, looking for other clinical trial indications, and hopefully actually come back to this lab environment here, started many years ago, and go ahead with the compounds that are not GT002, but in the same group, where we do have data, they are interesting, and want to develop them. So where these 3 things, which were is the same, the same goals and targets that we have mentioned in the prospectus, in my presentations. It's not that it's always the same, but we're very much focused on the licensing agreement with GT002, and of course in our podcast I would take up. Is there any news, like you mentioned, Sanonia deals? There are other deals coming in more or less all the time. CNS is actually picking up psychosis, where we work in with the schizophrenia trial in Denmark starting. Is also picking up interest. So I think it will be interesting for anybody to listen to a little bit of news, if one can call it that, from the Gabather world. I think so.
Yeah, of course. So I've had 2 follow-up questions. So the first one would be, people are usually wondering though, how long would this money last for the company? Are you thinking this would be a year and a half, or?
A year. That was the goal of the study. This will hold for a year. But I must also tell you that I've slimlined Gabather regarding operation expenses as much as I can. There's still some things we can do. So the prognosis is around 1 year. We have the infrastructure and the resources that we need to get to the starting and quite advanced licensing agreements for GT002. We do have the infrastructure for the clinical trial. I mean, remember that the TOTEMS trial that is starting now is completely funded. right? So Gabater's
Yeah,
financial
of course.
involvement stops with the funding, and that's already budgeted and done, of the clinical trial material, which will be sent from the provider directly to the hospital in Denmark where the study is starting. After that, Gabater will be, alongside giving advice and being part of project groups and so on. But we do not, of course, treat any patients. I'm not a doctor. I don't do the EEG measurements of these patients or the controls. So all this is on track, and it's funded also. Remember, there are no extra costs expecting there or running costs for this. So I'm actually more than happy to come out once I got the first patient or the first volunteer EEG measurement put out with a press release that they're on their way.
I was thinking also the second follow-up question here. I got another one when just talking about your topics right now. But how would you say you would allocate the money during the year when it comes to maybe going to different conferences and so on? Would that be the main thing you would focus on this year?
Yeah, it will be. Although, that's something I've learned. It's not always necessary to attend all these the conference and meetings. They're always very expensive. They started DK Swedish upwards, and there are smarter ways of doing it. Either preparing very, very well in advance, or doing many things digitally, literally, like we're doing now. Marcus, you could be some inside in licensing person, and we would be having the same chat under confidentiality agreement. So there's so many things that actually, this changed a lot during the COVID times. Before COVID times, I was on these meetings sort of non-stop and traveling. Turns out that you can do many things more cost effective in this way. So the standard procedure is that people ask you, well, okay, if they're interested, then the next step is, okay, we want to look at your data, make a data room, digital one, where you have your presentation. Then you may have an agreement, a confidentiality agreement, and then they can look at the data. I don't need to be there to present it to them. These guys knows what they're looking for. So, that's one thing. The other thing, remember that the clinical trial in Denmark, when we got the regulatory authorities, this was a huge exercise because the regulatory rules for us, Gabater, consisting of very few people, they are the same as for Novo or Pfizer, who have hundreds and thousands of thousands of people working for them. But the rules are the same. The documents have to be in as good shape for both of these different situations. So we got a good material there. That was quite a big loop to jump through, but we did in the end. So I was really, really happy when we got the green light there. I think it was a clap on the shoulder. After all, it's then 50 plus different documents, everything from ethical committee to logistics to everything about GT002, and they went all the way back to our preclinical data from 2016. And I don't know about you, Marcus, but if you have to find a paper or a quito that was something that you bought at IKEA in 2017 and you can't really find it, but you need to find it this evening because else you get kicked out of the house. Can be a bit stressful, but we did it.
Yeah, another follow-up question, because I think some people are questioning this in one way, right? We have this Swedish small biotech company who's done the journey which a big pharma has problems to do. So we also have a fully funded phase 2, right?
Yeah.
What would you say around that? Because I think most people don't think about that you have a fully funded phase 2 in Denmark. How did that happen?
I think it's a fantastic story. And I can also tell you that in order to get this funded study by Innovation Fund Denmark, it's a competitive grant that we got. There were other people that were competing for the same resources as we did. And I don't know, we are an exception that we are, of course, a Swedish company running a trial, So it's a quite I'm sorry, and funny enough, now that you mention it, once we got this funding, even the people in Denmark, they said, wow, it's really amazing that this Swedish company out of nowhere got this grant. And I remember hanging myself up on what do you mean out of nowhere, But it's an exceptional story because, I've worked at Big Pharma myself. Everybody that's in this business knows how difficult it is to get to this level. And there are many, many projects I have been involved in that didn't get so far. And why that is, I don't know. The biggest difference, of course, between all the other project and Gabater is that we don't have so many options. We have to succeed. We have to get forward. I don't have a project A, B, and C. I can just open the drawer and just continue. I don't have the resources for it. If you work at Big Pharma, you always have okay, you didn't meet the criteria for this project, then we start with another one. We didn't have that
Yeah,
option.
of course. Yeah. Thanks for all these answering all my questions and for everyone listening. So we'll try to cover more on the topic of EEG next episode, and we'll also continue communicating on how to get a hold of us, how to ask questions. I'll try to be the spider in the net. I'll try to scramble questions where I can find them. So stay tuned, and thanks for participating today, Michael.
Yeah, you're welcome. And just one last word for you. Please give feedback to Marcus, who is the spider, literally the spider in the net here. If you want us to continue this format, I think it's very good. But I'm in my own bubble. I don't know. Give feedback to Marcus. Hopefully many people find it interesting. If you find it interesting, join us. Send questions to Marcus. He's the guy that's going to filter it, sort them out, and maybe with the questions, then we can also go forward to looking at what topic we can cover next. For example, one of the things I would like to cover is, for example, the history of Gabbard. I mean, we've been around for more than 10 years now, in a way. And
Yeah, of course.
in a way, it would be maybe interesting also for those people that joined at the very beginning. How did we get there? Because I have been involved with Gabbard related, at least at the molecule level, for more than 10 years. So it could be interesting. So how did we get to this situation that we're actually starting a clinical trial in patients? So I think it would be nice.
It would be nice to tie it how it all started, and maybe not only
Exactly.
for the people who's here, maybe to the new investors that would come
Exactly.
along the ride with time. So, and I think the only thing I want to mention also, some of these questions, and I'm going to ask, to Robin here. Robin might not know that I'm going to come with these questions. They're going to be quite authentic, transparent, and will not try to make any PR stunts. We will only select what we want to hear ourselves. We'll try to actually answer the questions that everyone else are interested in hearing.
Absolutely right, Marcus. It's actually something that we agreed on at the very beginning of the very first meeting or the very first trial. I didn't want any rehearsed answers. I don't have any papers in front of me. I'm not reading anything off of anything. I don't know what questions, I can guess, of course, what question will come, but I'm not prepared for any specific questions. And I will try to answer them as good I can. And it could definitively be that I will have to say, I don't know. I'll get back to you in the next podcast. I don't know.
Yeah, of course. I think that becomes a bit authentic as well. But
Yes,
thanks
exactly.
for today, Robin, and
Yeah.
see you all next time. Thanks.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.